at Let's Talk Stroke. I'm your host, stroke survivor Jerry Wall, and for those of you that are new viewers, I started doing this show to spread awareness about stroke, TBI, aphasia, brain injury in a nutshell, and also to give a platform for all survivors to share their journeys and to have experts on in brain health. So my guest this morning is Dr. Tom Broussard, also a stroke educator, and he survived 3 strokes as well. And he's on a mission to teach people about aphasia. So let's please ask questions and share this content, because you never know who will need this. So please share it, and let's go ahead and get started. Taking a chance. All righty. Well, let's go ahead and bring on Dr. Broussard. Good morning. How are you?
Hi, Jerry.
Oh.
How you doing?
How are you doing?
Pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing great. We'll wait a few people here. Yeah. Good morning, Kimmy, Lynette, Salud. You see the comments?
I see. Hi, guys.
All right. Yes. Good morning, Yvonne. And I know Yvonne. People all across the country. Yvonne is from Athens, Greece. And I'm bad at where everybody's from. But wow, great to see you. It's been a little while, and you've been busy.
Yeah, well, the month was just a couple of weeks ago, and it was very busy for that month.
Yes, absolutely. So a lot of people really don't know the story. I mean, actually, a lot. Good morning, Stephen. How many? I mean, you've had 3 strokes. And you had the TPA.
That's true. I had the TPA for the first stroke.
Wow.
But not for the 2 TIAs.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I watched your YouTube video yesterday. I missed the live, and you talk about. I know we talked this morning about. I don't want to butcher it all up.
Topiary. Topiary.
What is that?
What is topiary? Well, I couldn't pronounce it either. I had to really practice because you saw the video from a few days ago, and I butchered it, as you say. But it's not unlike aphasia. I had no idea what aphasia was or what it meant at all. So it's interesting that now that we now have learned how to say aphasia, then you find other words that have their own difficulty quotient, and then we start to realize, oh, that's how we learn stuff, by repetition, by hearing it out loud, by hearing other people say it, by going to the dictionary and having them keep saying it, which is what I did. I kept hitting this little thing, said topiary, topiary, topiary. And eventually, because of the way the brain works, especially with plasticity, it creates the nerves, those little neurons and the dendrites and synapses, and it builds its own little network of its own, so that it can now, based on this amazing, right? It's amazing that the brain works like that, that you can now say topiary when a week ago you didn't even know how to pronounce it all. It sounded like geography,
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And you talk about the bushes and all that.
Yeah, that too. When after my first stroke, and got the TPA, and then I started, when I was able to read, I started reading about how I got the damage and how I got better. And that's when I first heard about pruning, like you're pruning your bushes,
Right.
But the more I read about it, then I found out that in addition to the pruning we do with our bushes, the brain itself prunes and arranges and clips and trims this, quote, network. And on the outside, we think of those things as if they're physical things. So we think about a network, or we think about those bushes. We think about trimming them. Well, really on the inside, we just have to come to understand how it, quote, works on the inside with nothing but 3 pounds of Jello that happens to have trillions of neuro components that happen to be packed in there. But they have this amazing ability to grow or regrow the additional dendrites and branches, which really become, metaphorically, they become branches and leaves. So you actually do have to arrange them in a certain way, make it look very pretty on the outside, because you want it to look like an elephant, even though it's just a bush. Or what I did here, I got this great video, a great picture. Can you see it?
Let's see, I'll pull it up here. There you go.
So that looks like a brain, right?
Yeah.
So I went and found that on the internet, and that's when I began to understand that the brain works that same way. So it really can do all that clipping, so that we can now say topiary, and then finding out, oh, topiary is the metaphorical equivalent of what happens on the inside to clip it, put it together, bind it, and make it into, again, physically make it look like a brain. On the inside, it just makes it look like topiary.
Right. And I know I'm picking up a lot of things from your video about people don't really realize the activities you have to do for aphasia.
Right.
And so that's pretty important, isn't it? Absolutely
important. It is incredibly interesting that at the end of the day, so basically, like all of us, especially at the beginning, when we didn't know anything, we couldn't hear anything, we couldn't understand anything, and the brain does its thing to get better, then at some point, unless you happen to have known this before your stroke, and I didn't know it, I guess I used to do repetitive things, like I played tennis and squash and baseball, not realizing just how the interaction between what I want to throw, it's creating that throwing physics on the inside, right?
Right.
So it can say topiary, except it's saying throw a strike. I didn't know any of that, this repetition is how those little critters, they just happen to be trillions of them, that they have this ability to arrange themselves in a certain way and then do what it has to do, whether it is learning a new language, playing ball, or being able to pronounce and say what you couldn't express before. And it all has to do with plasticity and several other principles of neuroplasticity. But I think a large part of how we get better is when we are told, consciously becoming aware that if we do these certain things, usually repetition, intensity, and so on, then in fact, we now begin to understand that if we do those things, those little guys continue to grow, and then bind, and using the building a set of habits that then neurologically, it can do what it did a week ago because it built the habit, which again, for topiary, they built it using metaphorically those wired steel cages, right, that they use to start that bush, and they arrange it with those wire cages, and then let the material grow, and then start clipping it to look like it would look like. but using those wires, which really become the habits of our brain.
Right. It's really interesting. I love your analogy about doing activities, and then if you succeed at that activity, you get promoted. In an analogy apart, keep picking those things out of your video.
Yeah,
but it makes sense.
It's amazing, really. The brain is an amazing thing, and as difficult as it is, some of the rules, some of the things we've now started to learn are relatively simple. You know, it's like our kids when you say you have to do your homework, and they say, "Yeah, I don't want to do it." They say, "No, you have to. You have to," and that's one of the behavioral issues that's so important. There are adults that don't want to do what they now have to do if they're going to get better. So that's the big issue. That's why they talk about the therapists talk about the 5 rules of recovery. 1 is motivation. 2 is practice.
Yeah.
3 is practice. 4, practice. 5, practice. So you have to be motivated enough, or somebody has to infect you with some amount of motivational spirit. And then motivation and practice is how all of us get better
Right.
at various levels, depending on who we were, what our severity was.
Right. Now, Yvonne, are you asking a question? Or pruning in the same of bonsai? Not
bad. I like that. I like that. Pruning is the same as bonsai.
Right.
It is very much a good metaphor of topiary and how the brain works. It's like building the pruning the bonsais. Yeah, that's very good, Yvonne. Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And then some people, I think probably since what is, even though I know what it is, most people maybe know exactly what it is. Plasticity.
Oh. What is it?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, for people that really aren't aware of the true meaning of it.
Sure. And most of what I try to do is provide metaphorical stories so people can better understand without being a scientist yourself, you know. And most of us, unless we become a scientist, we really won't know a whole lot about the scientific underpinning of how it is we get better. But
right.
Plasticity is a very important thing. And metaphorically, it is not unlike photosynthesis, which we all know. When we were in 3rd grade, we learned that that photosynthesis converts light into green leaves, right? Into the material that becomes topiary. So it converts light into green leaves. Plasticity converts thought and cognitive activities, as if you are reading, writing, speaking. That is converting that into brain matter. It is converting it into new growing branches and leaves, otherwise called dendrites and synapses.
Yeah.
That is sort of, I'll call it simple again, because it's never simple at all. It's incredibly complex, but it's also incredibly complex about how the brain, how the photosynthesis really works too, bringing in the energy that comes through sunlight and converting it through any number of chemical engines that create what it has to do on the inside of a tree and leaves. But at the higher level, just converting light into green leaves is the same thing as converting with plasticity, converting thought, which you might as well think of that as light, right? Converting thought into grain matter. And the remaining cells, the ones that were lost from your stroke, and you probably lost, you know, pick a number, a couple 100 billion cells. What? Gone. They're never going to come back. But however, the remaining cells have that capacity to grow more branches and leaves, and as a result, build the new brain matter that now can be arranged in a certain way that allows us, all of us, to now speak better, read better, write better, than we did before. And that is all that ever happened, is we lost it from the stroke. We got it back because the remaining cells have that capacity to grow more of what they now call the learning field. That's what it does.
Right. And that's
what it
even,
does.
but you have to work at it. I mean, if I do nothing,
I forgot about that.
If I do nothing all day long, don't even talk to anybody, I'm really defeating the purpose to recover.
You're right. You're right.
How does a caregiver, is there a good way, like if I'm a caregiver to a brain injured person, how do we help them? Because we really don't want to talk about our feelings, or I think.
Yeah, it's always difficult. There's no doubt about it. It's always difficult. Even if you, well, it's always difficult. And how somebody who is not motivated becomes more motivated, and if you have a caregiver that can help, it's so difficult that I think we end up trying to do is sharing our stories with each of us, so that even if you're somewhat depressed, if at least you get to see your videos, Jerry, and other people go, oh, because you get to listen, because you have people come and talk about our story, and it's really sharing all of our stories. Everybody I'm looking at here has a story to tell. So that sharing of stories happens to be therapeutic, because even those who are not as motivated as they would like, but somehow the caregiver says, look, and just open up this video, watch Jerry, what he's doing. Then people go, oh, you mean there are thousands, if not millions of people like us, that we exist, right? We actually do live with each other and know each other and learn from each other. And then you find out, oh, and I don't have to worry about going out with people who really don't know about it and don't want to know about stroke and aphasia. Aphasia is one component of it all. And then you can become more, quote, motivated by just hearing from others, and then hearing from others, and they say, oh, well, you can do these kinds of things. Again, now back to the repetitional component of it. But the repetition can be, oh, you're not like you're going to keep saying the same word over and over again, although I do with Topiary. But if you go to a book club and you get to read with your friends, that's the repetitive component. You're not reading them over and over, but you are reading it together. If you can't read it yet, you get to listen to somebody else, and then you start to see some of those words and begin to imagine. And the brain is so imaginally immense, because just imagining starts to build that connectivity that it does just by remembering and imagining, because then it becomes more than an imagination. You get to attempt to pronounce, attempt to write, attempt to say, but now you can hear it here, as well as the physical activity of writing something. But all of that works. So yes, motivation is huge. There's no pill, but the truth is there can be a little pill. And all it can be is watching, I'm going to say this, watching Jerry doing what he does. I mean, let's face it, this is more than a little bit amazing. And I know that many of you who are listening probably also know there are other Jerrys out there. And the more Jerrys there are, that means the more of all of us. Salud is a great example. Salud, talk about repetition, talk about learning from somebody else's shared stories. I watch Salud all the time, and you don't have to watch a lot. You just get to see, oh, that's Salud and her and Tom and these issues, because the brain absorbs what it is seeing. And when we say absorbing, we think, oh, that's just absorbing like a sponge. Well, metaphorically that works, but the brain actually builds in the information based on the absorption of watching somebody like Salud as a good example. But there's in the world, there are lots of Jerrys, there's lots of Saluds, there are lots of Ivans, there are lots of people who actually do begin to realize, if they this group already knows full well that what they are doing themselves is highly therapeutic just by telling somebody over the fence with one of their neighbors who's never heard of this before.
Right.
Never mind Jerry with hundreds and hundreds of people listening to what you have been doing, introducing other people who really just want to share our own story.
Yeah, it's so crazy because I'm coming up on 11 years and, for my brain injury, my stroke. Yeah. And the first 4 years, I think, I didn't know what to do. I remember my wife telling me, go get a hobby or something. And then I found out, Facebook, I'm not the only one that had a stroke at 49. There's people I've had 14 years old or what. So all this, like you said, I can talk to you or somebody else that has a stroke. We know what we're going through. And people out there in the world really don't know. I mean, especially the emotional part of this thing is a tough one.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and I love all these. There it is, Lynette. I can actually read it now. She always says this, but I butcher it every single time. You have the right to get down, but you don't have the right to stay down. People are watching you and need to see you get back up.
Very nice.
Right?
Very nice.
I love that. That's a
very
great
nice.
thing there.
Good, Lynette.
I love all
nice.
the comments. I know we missed a few here. I got a couple of them here. I can scroll back here, and it says Stephen Albright. I don't know if he said, I joked with my neuro about just removing the dead zone. He laughed at me. There's so many. I can't remember them all, but there's so many out here. But yeah. So Salute said, thank you. Saw that for the shout out.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? Yeah,
it is. Monday through Friday, and this is actually, Tuesday and Thursday. And again, look who's here. The stroke educator. There he is. Dr. Tom Broussard. Yes, and I can't turn it back. I'm looking. There it is. Yeah. I have all yours here too. I see it in the corner there. At the top, your book there. But hello, Denise. Nice to see you.
Denise.
Where are you from? If we don't know who you are, tell us where you're from.
Yes.
Sorry if I don't remember or anybody, but yeah, this is so much to talk about with aphasia, because aphasia month is June, right? And
June. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was. Do you ever have this? At nighttime, you get a little more tired, and the speech kind of goes a little more south. Yeah, I know that for me, and my wife just tells me, "What are you saying?" I finally give up and say, it must have been not that important.
No, you're absolutely true. As in my case, anyway, as I get older and have my health issues, I get tireder, and yes, it seems to hit aphasia earlier, such that it's more difficult in the evening. So now, because it's happened so many times, that I will say to my wife, after I try a couple times, I can tell that they can't really fully understand. Yeah. And I know, they'll be bothered. I'll be bothered. I then say, I'm sorry, I will stop talking now. And that's it. I go off and do my thing.
Right. Right. I don't give up. Yeah. Yes. Yvonne, be nice to me. I know I don't give up. I just, sometimes I forget what I was saying. And I just figured, I'll go on to the next thing. But,
yeah. And go ahead. And Denise.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just looking Josh's comment. Looked at the hemorrhagic survival as a medical obstacle. Yeah, just right. Yeah. I like that. But you were saying something to Denise. Yeah,
Denise Lowell is from Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And she runs an organization called Just Ask. And for Aphasia Month, I forget, maybe it's your third year, I think, Denise, that she started, this time anyway, started a conference. I think it was every Saturday for an hour and a half, every Saturday of Aphasia Month, with all kinds of experts from all kinds of people in the stroke world. And I went to, I think just to the one, because it came against other things too on the Saturdays, but still, she's done a fantastic job. And as always, it all starts with one, and sometimes it's just one, with friends that help. And Denise is one of those who is just like you, Jerry. There are lots of Denises, lots of Jerrys. And when I say lots, I don't really mean that there's a lot, but we at least have those that we have. And every one of us needs to continue to do what we do, such that you get others. Just like, again, I'll go back to Yvonne and Salute and all the other folks that we're watching here now, because all of us, you can only imagine, we didn't know each other a couple of years ago.
Right.
But we all had our stroke a couple of years ago. So you get connected, you start the connectivity of networking, and all of a sudden, oh, I really do have really good friends. And when we can help, we help. And as we heal, we heal.
Right. It's so true. I know the like my friends out in the out world that haven't had any brain injury, they try to understand, but then we, like you said, we all have our friends here in the stroke world,
right?
And we all reach out to each other if you're feeling a little down or something. It's absolutely terrific, and I like all the comments, you guys. So please comment or ask questions, because how often do we have Dr. Tom Broussard, who is an expert in brain health? So please, good morning, Chandra, I butchered that one. Thank God for the connections. But brain health is so important. And you really cover it all. I see all your videos. But what is non-use?
Learned non-use?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah, it's I've said this to you before. I've told my wife before that I'm happy I had my stroke, and immediately she says, "Well, geez, don't talk like that. That's just not." I said, "Well, it's true, but I don't want to bother folks or make anybody depressed, but I was just lucky enough that as I got better, I just got this new gift. Again, Jerry, you're a good one. Denise, others, it's a gift. Yeah, you have to call it what it is. And it's either something terrible, and you're going to spend the rest of your life feeling terrible, or you make a decision that this is more of a gift. And use the tools you already have, right? So all of us have the tools we have. Yes, there are other tools that aren't as good as they used to be, but you can adapt them, change them, and use the tools that you do have to a greater effect. So I am happy and lucky, and I say it's never happy, but I am lucky to be able to read again. And I think who we are before our stroke has an awful lot to do with who we are after our stroke. Because if you were motivated before, the motivation is inside of you. And even if you've been damaged with your brain, there's still a component of you that will use the same skills and grow or regrow some of those components that allow you to be more motivated, if that's the case, and practice, if that's the case. So again, when I say I'm lucky, everybody has their own path going forward for sure, but an awful lot has to do with who you were before, I'm sure. So anyway, in my case, I read about this thing called learned non-use. They started with the physical component. So if you have, so this is my bad hand, and I would have to use this hand. They started constraining the good hand so that you could only use what I call the bad hand. And that was because otherwise because the brain will continue to regenerate those dendrites based on the practice of speaking, but also the practice of doing, right?
Yeah.
So doing creates the, as you know, Jerry, more than anybody, that's how it works. But you have to constrain what I call the good hand. With language, when it comes to aphasia, the learned non-use is that if you know you can't say what you want to say, you know that you'll be embarrassed if you try to do that, then you will learn non-use, so you will stop saying those words. You will stop doing those things. So learned non-use, unfortunately, is a travesty, because that is the way the tool works, is to use the physical or mental speech expressive motor to then grow more of the expressive motor. So you can't non-use that, you have to use it. And they work hard to make sure that you are not experiencing the tragedy of learned non-use, which all of us have at the beginning, because you just don't want to do it. So that's what learned non-use comes from.
I love that, because I've done the constraint therapy, physical, or and, that really does work, because you can't use your, well, we know you can't use your, I say the good side, the good hand, and and the bad hand. But for aphasia, so when I do like the constraint, the non-use, I think about before sometimes when I'm going to say something. Otherwise, it just blurts out, and it then makes no sense. But so the right way to do it, because I haven't been to speech therapy in a long time. Do I think about it, then spurt it out, and hopefully it comes out right?
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, it is interesting. As a matter of fact, you saw an article a month or two ago when I talked about learned non-use. Right. And there's this particular article that, if you would like, I can send to you, and then you can send it to other people.
Oh, that'd be terrific.
That is this scientist is a great person, writes very well. It's it's very scientific, but he still is able to express pretty darn well. And not apparently, but back before, when the therapists were thinking about constrained therapy for the body, then other people started thinking, oh, well, we can constrain that for aphasia. So you can actually look that up, and you can find out lots of things about constrained therapy for aphasia. Okay. But scientists like this guy, his last name is Pulvermal, hard time to say.
Like Topiary.
Yes, you got it. Yeah. And you said Topiary very well. So now we have to work on, his first name is Friedemann Pulvermal. We'll have to work on that. But when he started saying, this constrained therapy for aphasia, we don't really mean constrained so much as now he says it's more focused, not so much constrained, although because the literature says that for aphasia it's constrained, but he says it's more focused. And when it's focused, then it's no longer felt like it's a negative thing. You're somehow constraining your voice, because you have to focus your voice. So focus on any number of things that can be then considered therapeutic, whether it is in a book club or this presentation or any number of others that are more focused. And the therapists do provide exercises that are more focused, as opposed to constrained. But I'll send this to you, and I think that now they say constrained, focused, more focused, I think is a better way to do it. And with more focused, it means more stimulus. Yeah. And again, stimulus is that it is what it induces plasticity. So that's how it works now when they talk about it.
Wow, interesting. Okay.
And I'll send this.
Yeah. And I'm just looking the comments here. I love when they get involved here. Lynette Price. I'm still talking to people. And don't smile.
Yeah. What?
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
What's that?
Well, I was. Can you see what Lynette says? I was told to stop talk to people. I'm sure because they don't know what I'm trying to say and don't smile. You look all full. I'm confused right now. Sorry, Lynette.
There you go.
It doesn't take much for me to get confused. But let's see, there had some other, so special, okay, I'm looking, you got so much stuff here. So socialization is so highly therapeutic.
Yeah. I see one here, motion is lotion.
Motion
is lotion. That's also good.
Oh,
it's also good because it's all about the doing. Now, so I'll go back a little bit. So when I couldn't write, you might remember, I started a diary. And you go, how can this be? You started a diary, turned out to be a 500-page diary, but you couldn't write. Well, I didn't know that what I was writing didn't make any sense. I didn't know. So for the first 200 pages, the individual words were good words. They were true words, but when I put them all together, they just didn't make any sense. There were graphs and charts and metaphorical drawings that do make sense, but that's another class to talk about. Back to Josh and motion is lotion. It turns out that it doesn't matter how bad you speak, how bad you write, how bad you read, write, and speak. What matters is the activity themselves. It's all about the doing. That's what I'm actually wearing here. It's all about the doing. That's the secret. And the secret of doing is the motion that Josh mentioned. Because the more motion, the more activities, again, if it's a physical issue, that's also the way it works, but especially with our language, that even if you're unaware, even if you don't really know that this is, quote, helpful, it only later maybe when you become more aware that what you are doing is highly helpful, and that means therapeutic, then that becomes the motion is lotion, because then the more you do, the more you do.
Right. Well, it makes sense.
Yeah, for sure.
Wow.
So it really doesn't matter. Tell them, I don't care if it's a squiggly line, you have to have a journal with the date, even if somebody else has to write it for you, so that over 20 pages, that's 20 days. And if you start here and you can just do a squiggly line, by day 20, you know, even if it's just a line, it'll be not as squiggly. But there's a date, so you can go, oh, because I had a hard time with memory too. So I didn't know if it was today or yesterday or last week until more time goes by and you see the physical artifact of what yesterday looked like. And now it's 20 pages. Oh, that means 20 days ago, I did this. 19 days ago, I did this. And you begin to become more aware of the activities you were doing at a time when you couldn't, weren't aware at the time you first did it.
Wow, that's incredible. And I see Yvonne here saying she doesn't believe constraint therapy is always productive and can be harmful in some cases and put added pressure on the brain.
And is that constraint therapy for the body or for the language?
Yeah, it helped me, that constraint therapy, and I didn't even think about the brain when I was
right.
Yeah.
Well, in some ways, it's not unlike learned non-use. So when they're talking about constraining with aphasia, it's not unlike learned non-use. Since you, on the inside, you have decided, you've constrained your ability to speak when you otherwise could, even if it sounds bad, that would still be therapeutic. Then that would be not unlike the constrained component, why they now call it focus, not constraining, because with constraining, and I know some of the doctors and I've met them and they believe what I have yet to fully believe is that they actually want to constrain such that even body language, they want to restrict body language. And back to whatever somebody was saying, look at the way we're talking now. If you don't do this, how can you possibly understand what you're trying to say, right? Body language is how most of us work, especially before we didn't have language ourselves, millions, not millions, but hundreds of thousands of years ago. Body language tells the same thing. You have to eat, whatever it might be. So yes, they're actually constraining it that way. And we'll see how the scientists go going forward. But I do understand how this particular guy said, might even be a woman, who is very smart to say, it's not constraining such that you can't do those things. It is really just focusing on what you can do those things.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So I see it. Yvonne's talking about the body.
Yeah.
So. I don't know. I did it for a little bit, and that was it. But I didn't think about the brain. Didn't think it was going to be an issue. Just always thought it was part of my therapy. Yeah. I didn't know any better. I mean, who knew? For me, I didn't know what a stroke was when I had the stroke. I didn't even know what was going on.
Yeah, and I see Denise there saying I have a dry erase board and I use it every day. I can see that what is going on every day. Wow. That's also very important because both of those things is what Denise is doing, and both of those things are therapeutic. One is the activity itself is improving one's quote language. The other is providing the evidence of what you have done, such that if you look at it later today or tomorrow before you erase it, you go, well, that's what I said. So it saves some of the evidence, not only just the writing it for therapeutic sense of improving my language, but also writing it for the evidence to be viewed at some point in the future, even if it's just tomorrow or a month or an hour from now. It allows you to look, quote, back in time. And that too is part of how the brain works when it comes to stimulus. Every single thing we do is written with what the scientists call the neurocode. It's just like the code in your computer. The neurocode, it's what I call written with plasticity ink.
Yeah, neurocode. I saw it was trademarked, wasn't it?
My plasticity ink is a trademark of mine.
Okay.
The neurocode is what the scientists actually use in articles talking about the neurocode, and that is whatever happens on the outside, even as we're discussing it. You do this with your hand, you blink a certain way, you frown a certain way. All of that has an underlying neuro foundation written by what they call the neurocode. Everything, every single thing. So what I happen to call it plasticity ink, because in a metaphorical way, that is how we basically write our memory with plasticity ink.
Right. Now I got an issue with my, I have an itch on my eye. Now I'm a little nervous, that itch, but okay, a vision board, I see. That's what Denise says, a vision board. And then I'll read some of them. And Josh, yes, the attitude is just to start therapy. Right. Obstacles is a big, but I just might read. Continuing them is a huge fight on. Survivors never settle. Absolutely. Okay. Hello, Brooke. Nice to see you here. Josh, do you just smile in the mirror helps? Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to look at myself and smile. I mean, that's just me. Just see my wife coming in. Why are you smiling? Well, I don't know, because Josh told me.
Well, if you can't express things, right? If you can't talk, but if you smile or you do other kinds of physical things, based on the way the brain is designed, the motor strip and the sensory strip live next to each other, right? And if if you cannot express that you're happy, but you smile, because they're connected in such a way, the motor component of these two strips will actually send information to the sensory strip that wants to say, I am happy.
Yeah.
I can't do that yet, but I can smile. But the way they're designed, the more you do those activities, including smiling, even if you can't express it, even if you're not aware, the messages, meaning the neurocode, the messages are being sent to the sensory strip. And the day will come when you can now say that you're happy when you couldn't express before, based on the physical activity that sends that information of smiling.
Yeah, that's good. The thing is, I'm always happy.
Always
I mean,
smiling,
I
yes.
have those little, we have those down days.
Right.
So, but yeah, so I'm just kidding, Josh. But I'll look in the mirror a little more and smile at myself. But Kimmy, do you have a? I think you have a question there. And do you see it there from Kimmy? Kimmy's
Which
kitchen?
one?
And the top one.
Oh, what is it? Why is it beneficial for me to pay attention to a stroke doctor when I have a
She has a TBI.
TBI.
Yeah.
Oh, be asking so I can have a medical answer in addition to what I tell everyone. Why is it beneficial to me to pay attention to a stroke doctor when I have TBI?
Yeah, traumatic brain injury. She got in a car accident.
Right. Asking so I can have a medical answer in addition to what I tell everybody else. Oh, yes. So the only little I know is about aphasia and recovery, but now learning more about how the underlying foundation about how the brain works, no matter what the otherwise outside appearances are that are referred to as disabilities of one kind or another, they have the same underlying foundation. So I am sure that all of the activities, even if you're not necessarily aware, certainly, or really can't even maybe fully understand at that point in time, but if you go through the motions, like somebody said before, the motion is lotion, or what do they say also, fake it till you make it type of thing. I think it has an actual therapeutic and neurological good reason for faking till you make it, because even if you aren't motivated to do one thing or another, but you end up doing it because the body does what it does on its own, you become more used to understanding what it is you're doing, and you'll do better with it, and it will continue to transmit the motor component, sending it back to the sensor component of that strip. So yes, I would think, God knows what the real doctors would tell you, but I am sure that the more we do, the more we do. And as they say, somebody has said, and we've all heard it before, we fake it till you make it. And I actually do think that is therapeutically useful.
Right, absolutely. Okay, yeah, that's Yvonne. I totally understand.
Hi, Denise.
Thanks for showing up. Appreciate it. So I remember months when I couldn't talk or move, but I could smile. The doctors would say, "What do you have to smile about?" Oh gosh. Yes.
Oh, there you go.
That's right.
Positive mental attitude.
Exactly.
And it has to do with repetition. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Repetition. That's so important.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Any other last words, Dr. Broussard? I don't want to.
Oh.
Well, since we're just about to end here, and I appreciate everybody showing up. It really
absolutely
means a lot.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We ended up starting with the Topiary, and how the brain works metaphorically, how we otherwise create what is otherwise a bush to look like an elephant,
Right.
We do the same thing with the brain, so we can actually make what looks like the material, the raw material of the brain, into that elephant or
Right.
topiary or whatever we want to talk about, based on the way it's built. It's an amazing, I continue to say it, it's an amazing device. No matter, it's and as difficult and as damaged as it is, it still has that ability. I'm working on a couple articles that it'll be even new metaphorical understanding about how the brain is so powerful, even when so much has been damaged, that still has that capacity to keep on building.
Yeah.
So, but I know everybody has their own story to tell, and half the time I'm sorry for describing mine as if it's somehow useful for everybody. So it just is the way it works, and I'm really happy and that Jerry does what he does to make this possible for all of us.
Yeah, it is nice to have survivors on just to share. Every story is different. At least I've had, and certainly our stories are different. So we all can learn from each other.
Absolutely.
Or learn different things. So anyway, I appreciate you guys. And as always, Dr. Broussard, I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you, Jerry. Thank you very much. Thanks for everybody. See you again soon, I'm sure.